All right, guys, the time has come finally to get the K series into the BRZ. So there's just a couple things that we have to do to get that installed into the car. And I've noticed that the way that they do it in the instructions is to put it on with the transmission. So let's get going on that. All right, guys, so we got this adapter plate installed. There's a couple Allen bolts that go in there. And now the next step is to go ahead and put the clutch on. Here I have the Sachs clutch. I opted for the better aftermarket one that can hold more torque because I do plan on boosting this car eventually. So I figured let's not go with the basic one that might not hold up. Let's get something good, but also not so aggressive. So I also went with this steel flywheel because the idea behind this car is for it to be a street car. So it's not going to be full-on race car all the time, even though I'm not going to daily drive it, but I do want it to be comfortable when I do drive it on the road. And I don't want to hate driving this car, so opted for this instead of the lightweight. As you know, the lightweight ones tend to lose a lot of rotational force, and it just makes it more difficult to drive the car. And it's good for when you're like accelerating fast trying to race people, but I don't really care about that too much. The car's going to be making enough power to where it won't need a lightweight flywheel, in my opinion, to be a nice car. And frankly, I want it to be a nice car. You know, I want it to drive nicely, drive it like stock. I don't want to be going all crazy. I do have a twin disc competition clutch that I could put in there if I wanted to, in case we go above the 500 horsepower mark later on if we get a built engine. But for now, I think this is going to be great. And then plus the GR86 trans probably won't even hold it, so I would have to build the trans as well. I just want to keep it simple, keep the budget low, and just have a nice fun car. And I think 500 horsepower in this car is going to be more than enough to be able to enjoy it. I mean, it was fun back when I had it with the FA20 boosted, but this time I'll have a cheaper, more reliable engine that I won't care if I blow. So let's go ahead and get this installed. Flywheel's on, and now it's time to put all of the brand new OEM hardware that we got. These are the OEM flywheel bolts from a manual versus this, this engine was an automatic. So we're gonna be using these all brand new. I'm gonna be putting some red Loctite and making sure that they stay on. It looks amazing though, look at that. I like how it sits pretty much flush with this adapter plate. That looks so good. All right, there we go. Clutch is on. I had to find my old hardware. I guess you use the factory FRS hardware or BRZ hardware in this case to bolt it. So I couldn't find any of the bolts in the kit, so I figured that's what it was. And yeah, looks like they bolted right up, held it in place, and they have that nice little lock washer on them so that make sure they don't come loose. But the Sachs clutch is on. I think now what's next to do is bring the transmission. So here we are with the trans. I got this nice little plug right here on the back that I got from my burn car. I was always hesitant to cut a drive shaft, but since this drive shaft was messed up, I was like, might as well just finish cutting it off. Now we have plugs for the transmission when I go to do oil changes and whatnot, or dropping in trans. So that's nice because now I don't have to worry about having a big old drive shaft hanging out the back. But here's the transmission. This transmission has about 1,000 miles on it. Pretty much brand new. You can see the aluminum still looks super shiny. For some reason, the aluminum on this looks a little different, but I'm gonna show you this has never been touched. So it's got everything on it, all the factory stuff. I thought about needing the Veer stuff, but I'll probably worry about getting the Veer stuff later. Hopefully that holds on for a while. Yeah, this is the trans. We're gonna go ahead and bolt it up to the K now. That way we can get this into the car. I'm curious to see if I would be able to change the trans out eventually, so that we can take it out, put it in, or if I need to go more power, also change it for something else. But I don't know, I just love the fact that I didn't have to buy a trans, I just had one, an extra one from a parts car. So having all these parts available to me just makes this build even more inexpensive, because the goal is to have this full build done in between 20 and 25. We're talking a 2018 BRZ TS with 3,000 miles on the dash, which means everything inside, all the suspension components. Well, not the suspension components, because all those have been swapped out, but everything that comes associated with a 3,000 mile car would be there, apart from the mods. So we're talking all the stuff we put in the engine bay, the ABS module, the brakes, the by brakes I mean the brake booster, the clutch master, all the ECUs, all the harness, all that stuff is like really low mileage. All of the interior as well. So it'll just be nice to have this car that's going to be super built and have it under the price of buying one of these new at the moment. It's funny because a customer just bought a 2020, I think it was, with like 20,000 miles. He paid like $29,000 for his car, bone stock. So if I can be under that, I'll be happy. Obviously, the car's going to be salvage title, so it's not going to be worth much, but in my eyes, everything has been repaired properly, so it's all nice and back to factory spec. So everything should line up perfect. And then now we're going to be having a whole different drivetrain, you know, with the K and a GR86 trans. So I'm excited for this. Let's get this mated, get it into the car, start working on putting that together, and hopefully get it running here shortly. Might not be today, but get it running and make sure that all the systems are working properly before I put anything together 100%, because I don't want to be taking off panels later on. So yeah, let's get this on. So trans is on, got it all bolted up nicely, thanks to the help of Tony here, helping me line it up and then put it on. So now I want to go ahead and put the trans mount, and then I think that's all we really need. I might need to put the starter in. I have a starter from when I had an RSX Type S that I bought brand new, never used it because the starter turned out to be good. Yeah. So I might just slap that on here so we can finalize the last bolts that go for this. But yeah, looks good. So now the next step before we put it in is to install the transmission mount that we got from K-Power. So we'll do that. Looks like it comes with like a white line bushing. Make sure it's more solid, and the hardware we need as well. Cool. So I got the trans mount on with the white line bushing that they provide to go in between the factory trans mount, and then put the K-Power forward. Didn't really look at the instructions, but I know that they say that the trans is supposed to get pushed 4 inches back. So the normal mount's here. So now the mount should be more forward. So that's why I went ahead and set it up that way, because figured it would just mount straight up how it's supposed to. Got this lined up. And now I think we're ready to throw this in. All right, engine and trans is ready to go in. Went ahead and remove this top bar so we can have full access to get the engine and trans in. I went ahead and bent these out of the way too. They normally come out straight, so just kind of moved them to the side a little bit because that's what they recommend when installing the K kit. So everything's looking good. Excited to put that in. I can button up everything else even with the engine in here. I got the brake lines connected down there, and then I got the fuel line bracket here mounted with those 2 bolts. So that's where it should be now. So let's get this in. So one thing before putting it in, we're going to be replacing the shift selector. So here's the stock one, and then this is the new one that comes with the K-Power kit. It's like a billet aluminum piece. So got that clipped in, and then since it's moved 4 inches back, this obviously has to be shorter, but it'll line up with the factory shifter, so that's what we want. So the engine's in, sitting, it's kind of staying in place. Still got to bolt the back of the trans, so I'm gonna lift the car up so we can do that. And then I'll tighten down all the bolts that are on the engine mounts as well. But it's looking good, sitting in its place. All right, so I got the trans mount installed. Got it bolted up. It's looking very nice. Excited about that. Things looking good under here. Tons of space everywhere. Love it. Then my harness, my custom harness out through here connects to the transmission harness. No problem since it's loose. I went ahead and took off the bracket where these are mounted. They probably wouldn't reach, but now that they're loose, they can easily reach. So we'll have no problems with connecting that and probably connecting to the ground, which is right there. Oh yeah, perfect. That reaches as well. So now hopefully this reaches just fine, and then we'll be all good. They made me hit this, but I'm guessing this is more for the header. Yeah, I think that's more for the header versus the one where I smacked it here was actually for the trans. You can see there, if this went straight up here, definitely come in contact with the trans, but since I bashed that in, more than enough clearance. Cool. So now that we got the trans on, I kind of want to put the drive shaft, so I pulled it out. Here it is in this box. You can see it in there, so let's go ahead and rip it out. So here it is, the beautiful aluminum drive shaft with steel ends. I was wondering why it was so lightweight. I thought I had ordered it to be steel, but aluminum works as well. All right, so we got the drive shaft on. It's looking amazing. Got it bolted up to the diff using the factory bolts that are, on the car, and it's looking amazing. Everything's looking good over here. I went ahead and put the exhaust hanger back on. And now we can head up to the engine to start hooking up some stuff. So I figured I'd hook up the slave cylinder, and look at that. It's looking good. I'm not a fan that it's a little rusty there, but it's hard to clean without having to bleed this out. But obviously that fitment is crazy. Look how close it is to touching the block right there. And then same thing with that bolt. It's like so close, but they're not touching. The engineering behind this kit is amazing. So I'm guessing they had to adjust the thickness of this plate to make sure that there was going to be enough clearance, or else we would have to notch part of the block out to be able to fit that. But it's looking great. That's how the engine's looking in there, fully mounted. Still have to tighten down the motor mounts, but liking it. It's looking good. So here I am in the middle of doing the harness. I went ahead and redid the power and ground lines as well as the starter trigger. Wrapped everything up, got it all routed over. And now I was hooking up the engine harness. You can see here we got the harness hooking up this whole front section, but the harness that hooks up to the alternator, the AC compressor, the knock sensor, and like the throttle body and stuff does not reach, because the way they have this set up is for the 54 pin plug to be right here. And mine only comes out to there because I hid the harness on the inside. I figured if I made it come out through there, it'd be pretty much where the factory location is at. So I figured their harness accounted for that, but I guess their harness only accounts for you pulling your harness over to reach up with this one. So I'm about 18 inches shorter than I need to be. That harness does not reach that one, so then I'm at a dilemma. I contacted K-Power, see if they can extend these few wires here. I mean, it's only like these couple of wires here that would need to be extended. The rest of it is fine, but I'm kind of wondering if I should even splice into these. It's an option as well, to where I could just extend these cables to make them longer, and I could solve the issue. But then I'd be destroying this harness pretty much to try to get that achieved, right? So I figured another option would be to extend the 54 connector about 18 inches by splicing two harnesses. But it seems kind of like a daunting task. So I'm wondering if it'd be easier to just splice into these and then just extend these cables, but they're so nicely made that I don't really want to do that. So I'm hoping K-Power gets back to me and we can just get one where these cables are extended. All right, so while we hear back from K-Power about extending the harness, since they only really need to extend these few cables here, now that I think about it, we're gonna be continuing on with the next step. We have the intake manifold to install, but we need this IACV block off plate. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this. Since we're never gonna need this, I'm gonna Loctite it to make sure it never falls off. It comes with a gasket as well, so I got that on. So let's bolt this piece on. All right, so This wiring is really different compared to the stock wiring. And I'm not sure if I want to cut it, and especially this wire for the knock sensor. It has this extra like wire that kind of goes over it. So I don't know how I would even splice into that. I don't really want to mess with that yet. I think I'd rather go this option where I got another harness and I cut off the ends to join them together, and I can make a jumper harness to where this hooks up to the factory one, and then this one will hook up to this harness and give me enough slack. I just have to join all of these wires. Problem is I'm gonna have to do it one by one because all the colors are different. Yep. So not wanting to destroy that harness, here I am splicing the factory harnesses. So this is the factory chassis harness, and then this is the factory engine harness. So I'm gonna splice these together, and then that should make a nice little extension that's long enough to connect the factory harness on my car to this K-swap harness. So that way I don't have to chop that up, and then if all else fails, then I'll have to either extend that or route the wiring from this car just back to its original location. I really don't want to. So I'm giving myself more work because I don't want to route it, because I like having the firewall nice and clean with no wiring through it, but I can make it look pretty clean as well. But since I had already done that, I figured, why not try to just do this and make it work. And if it works, we'll be set. So let's get this spliced together. I'd say I'm about halfway there with all the connectors, pretty much connected them together, and I'm routing the cables so they're doing a full loop on each other, so that I don't get confused and mix up the wrong cables. So, but the problem is I ran out of the connectors that are like solder and like seal. I ordered some more. They should be here in a couple hours. So while I wait for that, I'm gonna progress on some other stuff. One thing that I found in the remaining boxes was this little piece here. Looks like an ECU connector, kind of, to where it hooks up the factory wiring to, I'm guessing the Haltech. Those look like Haltech connectors. So, and I knew when I was doing the wiring that I had to connect this back up there, which goes in that area there. But the problem is, it obviously doesn't have an opening for the other connectors. So I'm guessing I'm supposed to cut this out, possibly, to get that connector to fit through there. So I'm gonna try doing that and try to put this in here as cleanly as possible to where it still fits, and it fits nicely, so it looks like it's OEM. So let's go ahead and measure this out so I can cut it and then get this fitted in here. So I got that built into the factory box. So now that's in there. I hooked up the wiring to it. I figure I'll leave that in there for now with the Haltech stuff. So another thing I can do while I'm waiting on the connectors is figure out the fuel line situation. 2 of these will be capped off and only 1 of them will be left. I just don't know which one is going to be one of the ones that gets left. So I can actually remove them now that I think about it, and wouldn't need all of them. So ideally it'd be nice to keep the one that's all the way to the left side, which would be that one. I figured I might still leave them in case I want to do a return later. If I do go boost, I might need it to regulate the fuel, but who knows? Okay, so these are 2 fuel, and this is just like a little breather, I believe it was. So let's go ahead and figure out which one I need to delete. I can delete it from back there. So I lifted the car up and went ahead and plugged one of the fuel lines. They supply like this little aluminum plug, and then I connected. This connector originally connects here. I moved it over to this one because this is the shorter line. Once it comes up to the front, it will be this first line here. So that way I can delete this and kind of remove these 2, and then just worry about having that one, which is actually closer to where I need it to be. So figured I'd use that one. And then up here, this line usually tees off. So the part that tees off is the one I plugged, and the one that I kept is the one that's like straight through, so that there's no interference. It's just the fuel goes straight through without having to take a 90-degree turn up there. So that way it won't be like a 90 degree twice. I don't think it matters, but I figured I'd do that anyways, just to kind of help out as much as I can. So that's set up there. Yeah. So now I have to go up on the inside and mess with some ECU parts for the fuel pump ECU. So now the next step is to mess with the ECU for the fuel pump, which is that right there. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. We have to de-pin it and then hook it up differently, and then make it all work. Let's go ahead and de-pin it and do all this that it's telling us to do here. All right, so I got the factory harness de-pinned. That's it right there. And now we have to use the one that they provide. We're gonna repin it here. You can see they even color coded it so you don't mess up. So I gotta plug that in. And then this is gonna be the plug for this. So essentially we're gonna be deleting this ECU for the fuel pump. And this is just gonna make the fuel pump run like a traditional fuel pump. So let's get this hooked up. So just for keeping it nice and clean under here, I figured I would plug those two remaining cables back into the connector, plug them back into the little ECU. That way it holds this cable in place, because this is all the power and ground wires, so these are just signal wires, so I doubt that's gonna affect anything. But I figured instead of just zip tying it and whatnot, it might look a little cleaner for it to just be like that. Even though you're not gonna see it, but it's still in its factory location, just with that little adapter harness that makes the fuel pump work at all times. So I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and continue doing some more stuff while we wait. All right, so after finishing that, next step is to do the shifter apparently. And you get to install your stock shifter on this plate. I like how their installs, they don't remove anything. Luckily my car's fully taken apart, so it makes all this 10 times easier to do. And it looks like I'm supposed to cut this metal plate as well. I don't know why. Oh, you know, I have no idea. Let's see. Stock shift boot and all this other stuff. And hook it up from the bottom. Okay. Well, for the shifter, I'm using something much better. For that, I was just mocking up the flex fuel sensor because I bought that separately from the kit. And it plugs into this connector, which I thought it was not going to be connected to anything, but it's cool that they're using it for the flex fuel. So now that's gonna be sitting, I'm guessing somewhere there. I might try to hide it behind this. This is the fuel line I'm gonna use, kind of bent it out of the way. These I might remove just because they look kind of ugly just sitting here. So I have to figure out what I'm gonna do with that. But for now, check this out. This fuel line is obviously gonna get deleted. Technically, I could use the stock fuel line and just plug that into that flex fuel sensor if it's the same size. But if not, it doesn't really matter. So let's install the shifter. So one of the things that I was wondering about was how the shifter setup was going to be, right? So now instead of being on that tripod, there's like a little tripod that has rubber bushings on those two right there. Comes back here, bolts to an area right behind here underneath, and that's what holds your shifter in place, right? So now, obviously that's not possible because that tripod no longer exists. So they came up with the idea of making it, I guess, solid mounted. So here it is, shifter plate. So the idea is you take your stock shifter and you mount it here. You know, I just realized there's a hole right here. So you put this, bam, you stick your stock shifter in there, and then you can go ahead and have your stock shifter bolted to that piece down there, which is nice. I mean, you could probably put a short shifter on that, that'll work. But I've always loved an IRP short shifter. I just think it's the best shifter for the car. And I just love the way it feels, the way it looks, the way it's really tall, so that when I'm shifting, I can even change the stereo controls from here, GPS or whatever. And at the same time, when I have a hydro, which I plan on doing in the future, the hydro should sit around here, I'm hoping, so we can have both of them right next to each other. Go from shifting to hydro and still retain my e-brake. So that'd be cool. So this shifter looks so good, feels so good. Yeah, it rattles a little bit, but I can live with it. This is not gonna be my daily driver, so I'll be okay with a little bit of rattling every once in a while. You know, it's normal for a chassis mounted shifter, which I'm guessing the OEM one, you know, might feel similar since it's also gonna be chassis mounted. And it's funny because they didn't provide any rubber bushings or any rubber plate for the bottom of this, which is what the IRP comes with, but I think the one I had got destroyed, so I'm not running one either. So this is just gonna mount there, mount to that, and be done, right? Only thing I was just noticing is this hole here. And the reason I'm noticing this hole is because I saw a little bit of a glimpse in the instructions that this right here, the wideband, is supposed to sneak through your shifter area and go down, because I'm guessing the controller is going to get mounted somewhere in this area. Here's the wideband connector. So I'm guessing that's what that hole's for. So you can put it through there. But I was wondering if is there going to be a seal? I guess not. Regardless, there doesn't seem to be a seal or anything here. It might be somewhere else in the kit. But I don't know if I want to drill into this. I would have to drill a hole here to have this matching hole. So I'm going to look at the instructions and see what that hole's for. But there goes my shifters setup. Connectors came in, so went ahead and did all of them. These are like the solder butt connectors that seal so that it's watertight. Got them all done. So now I have a nice extension here to extend the harness. Now I just gotta wrap it up and make it look nice. So here it is, the extension I made using 2 factory harnesses to be able to make a nice extension that connects from that connector right there, that one. And it's gonna connect to the one that's supposed to be here, which is the harness that K-Power provides, which I did not want to cut up. So figured I'd make this extension. I'll probably worry about heat management later on. Probably get some nice heat sleeving to cover all these cables, since the header does pass like right by there. That's why you have to bash in part of this little part of the chassis right there, because the header gets really close to that. So most likely have the header cerakoted and probably heat wrapped as well. And then we'll heat wrap all of these cables as well, because they're kind of like sitting on the transmission. So gonna need to make sure that those are nice and heat wrapped, so they'll be protected from all the heat. This stuff is obviously designed to be like flame proof as well. So hoping that'll kind of hold up, but I'll still cover them in like a silicone heat wrap to make sure that they stay protected. But I want them to look good. So excited with my extension. Took me a little while, but got it done, knocked it out. 54 cables, wasn't that bad. So let's go ahead and plug this in, get it routed, and then we can probably hook up the rest of the harness, because I want to get it tested as well to see how everything's working. And we can worry about all the heat management stuff later. And if we go turbo, I mean, maybe we can avoid a lot of the hot spots if we do like a 3-inch downpipe that way versus having like 4 or 2 of the header tubes down there. Anyway, enough talking. Let's hook this up and get the harness on. So I got the wiring installed. The main connector that was kind of there, and all the connectors ended up being here. So I ended up lengthening or creating jumper harnesses for them. So that way all the connectors would be inside here. And then I heat wrapped everything because since the header is going to be passing through here, wanted to make sure that that wouldn't be an issue. So all the connectors ended up here. We have this main connector that is usually for like the direct injection ECU, and that's what's going to be the connector for our flex fuel kit now. And then the main starter wire, or I guess not the main starter wire, but it's going to be like the signal for the starter. Got that extended as well, so it all ends here, and then obviously the connector ends here. So now I can plug in the harness here, and we're gonna be able to reach all of the stuff that goes here. So now all the harnesses are plugged in here. Got them all securely mounted out of the way, and they're heat wrapped, so anything that's like laying on the trans or near it is now protected. Got all that covered. Now I can continue, and now I'm gonna be doing the heater hoses. So one heater hose is gonna go from here, this port, to one of those, and that one's gonna go to the intake, which in turn kind of connects, I think, here to this one. That's how we're gonna get the heater. So now that we got the wire stuff situated, I went ahead and started with the heater hoses. Used an FRS hose with all FRS clamps. They provide these worm gear ones, but nah, I went with the factory constant tension clamps. Make sure we don't have any leaks, so that's on. This one's gonna be connected onto the manifolds. I was just cleaning up the head so we can go ahead and install the intake manifold now. All right, so we got the intake manifold bolted down. We got the k24 map sensor plugged in. We got the harness for the throttle body plugged in. The harness for the injectors is all plugged in. Also, since I got the flex fuel kit, you can see there I mounted it to the bottom of the intake manifold. So that way the fuel line just goes into the ethanol content sensor, and then it just comes right up, clips right into the back of this. Front's capped off for now. I'm sure once we go boost, we're probably gonna need to run a return. So then I'll just go from here down, and then I'll plug into this one, which will be the return hose. So I'll leave those there for now until I figure out how to make those a little bit prettier. But I went ahead and found the belt because I opened the box for the AC lines, which is the next step, and the belt was in there, so it's cool. They provided the belt because I ordered the AC lines, or I guess that's why it's in there with them, because if you're not running the AC line, you're going to need to run a different belt if you're not running the compressor. But since I am, because I want to have it all work like factory, this is all set up here, good to go. It's so easy to access everything. Look at the space. If you need to replace one of these components, it's amazing. It is amazing. Okay, so let's go ahead and install the AC lines. You see there, I had them plugged off, make sure nothing got in there. So now we can route those. I do need to find the factory hose that goes here, which I'm guessing is gonna hook up to this. So I just gotta hook that up. So that way we can have a vacuum for our brake booster. All right, guys, so here are the AC lines as we talked about. Got them mounted in the factory location. They come up, they come over. Having a little bit of trouble routing them, so I decided I would put my CSF radiator on. Got a brand new fan shroud, got the fans on. Everything's gonna be looking good. I kept these because I didn't think they'd be so visible, but yeah, they might be okay. I don't know how big of a fan I am of them, but they are silicone, so they should last a little bit longer than the rubber stuff. Might as well keep them. And then I believe this one's gonna get cut anyways, like somewhere here. And then the rest of it is gonna be the hoses that you have to custom make / order. They come on factory on other cars, so they give you the part numbers for them. You just have to order them. So then I'm gonna go ahead and clamp that one where it needs to go, and then decide where I need to cut it over here. They do say so in the instructions, and then same thing for the one that goes here. I believe you use the factory one to come down. I actually don't know. I think I might just come down for you, go there, and just hook up to this back section right there, which is why they tell you to buy this to wrap the hose here, because the header is going to be right here. So that's most likely what I will do. So let's get these hoses on. I got to get the condenser on. I got a brand new one. Gonna mount to the front of this so that way we can hook up the AC lines and pretty much be done plumbing up everything, because I'm gonna keep it NA for a little bit. but I want to make sure I install this, even though we're going to be making a custom header for it, and turbo manifold. I want to just have it all in there. That way Jesse from JDL knows what the distance needs to be, or if we need to move it around a little bit. All right, so here we are now. I got the hoses installed. Black hoses gets covered in this heat wrap there because the header's going to be right there. That hose is connected to that one down there that I had to cut. I had to cut a bunch of it off, obviously, because there's only like a little piece there. We got all this in, got the condenser in as well. Got those AC lines hooked up. Everything's looking good under here, so I went ahead and put this little bumper support, I guess is what it would be called, because it's missing the hood latch section because I cut it off. We're not going to be needing that anymore since my carbon hood has other latches, so I figured that would eliminate a lot of the ugliness in this area, and it makes it easier to work on replacing or fixing stuff in this area. It gives me a little bit more room, so happy with that. I think it looks good. Went with an OEM fan shroud so we can run OEM fans. Those always work really well. If I can, I'll upgrade them later, which would be super easy to do. I can upgrade them to like a JDL fan shroud with the spall fans if I'm having heating issues with the turbo, but if not, then that's how it'll stay. I think it looks really clean having a nice OEM fan shroud. You gotta remember, this isn't gonna be full race car. It's just gonna be a very nicely upgraded street car that can go to shows, and I'll take it eventually, to track or two. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put the intake on, which I have right there. So now that we got this whole section ready, I need to put the shifter on. And to put the shifter on, I had to drill a hole, and then I had this grommet that I went ahead and stuck on there to make sure the wire doesn't get cut, because they already do a cutout on the one that comes with the kit. But since I'm going to be using this shifter, I have to do the same thing, because this is where our wideband is going to go through. So got that done. Now we can go ahead and install a shifter. But while we install the shifter, since I only want to do it once, is I'm going to be installing my hydro bracket at the same time, so we can get that done. All right, so I got the shifter with longer bolts. Obviously more OEM hardware, but these have a bigger built-in washer, and we were able to bolt it down. And now we have this plate for the hydro. So hopefully it doesn't get in the way of my leg, but the way they designed it is for the hydro to sit right here, right next to the steering wheel. Yank it, put it over. Yeah, I think that's gonna work out great. So there it is. We got the bottom of the shifter hooked up, hooked right on. Put the pin through, and then you can see the rubber grommet right there. Look at that. Sensor is right here. So then this just plugs in right into the exhaust. Leave that cap on there for now. Yeah, shifter's connected. Everything's looking good.